On August 6, 2025, the United States Supreme Court struck down the controversial Trump-era tariffs. This landmark ruling ends years of uncertainty for businesses and consumers, and forces a fundamental rethink of America's trade strategy. The decision wasn't just about economics, it was a powerful statement about the balance of power in the U.S. government. Tariffs, simply put, are taxes on imported goods, designed to make foreign products more expensive and encourage buying American. While tariffs have long been used for various reasons, the recent ones were broader and more aggressive, sparking intense debate. The Supreme Court's 6-3 majority concluded the president had overstepped his legal authority. The justices emphasized that the power to regulate commerce with foreign nations belongs primarily to Congress. This verdict reasserts the separation of powers as essential to American democracy, even in international trade. The ruling followed years of legal challenges from businesses and industry groups who argued the tariffs hurt their competitiveness and raised prices for consumers. Lower courts had already questioned the legal foundation of these tariffs. Now, with the Supreme Court's decision, the era of these unilateral tariffs has come to a definitive end. The ruling ushers in a new chapter for global trade and redefines how America engages with its trading partners. It's a constitutional check on presidential power, not a judgment on the economic merits of tariffs. The decision signals that major trade policy changes require congressional approval. This moment marks a turning point for both U.S. trade policy and the balance of power in Washington. The world is watching as America redefines its role in the global economy. The tariffs at the center of this legal battle were a signature policy of former President Donald Trump, rolled out in 2018 to reshape global trade. Trump argued the U.S. had been treated unfairly for decades, pointing to trade deficits as evidence. His tariffs targeted steel, aluminum, and especially China, aiming to protect American industries and pressure foreign governments. The first wave hit imports from allies like Canada and the EU, using a national security law from 1962. Later, broader tariffs targeted China under a different law, citing unfair trade practices. This sparked a trade war, with China retaliating against American products. Trump declared a national emergency, invoking emergency powers to bypass Congress. Supporters saw the tariffs as a stand for American workers, hoping to force better trade deals. Critics warned tariffs would hurt U.S. businesses reliant on global supply chains and provoke retaliation, especially against American farmers. The aggressive approach marked a sharp break from decades of bipartisan support for free trade. The debate over the tariffs' impact was immediate and fierce. Some praised the protection of domestic industries, others feared higher costs and lost export markets. The fundamental disagreement over the tariffs' purpose and effect set the stage for years of economic and legal battles. The policy's legacy is a deeply divided nation on how best to compete in the global economy. The Supreme Court's ruling now closes this contentious chapter. The U.S. must decide what comes next for its trade policy. The world is watching for America's next move. The Supreme Court's decision was rooted in the separation of powers. The majority found the president exceeded authority granted by Congress. The Constitution gives Congress, not the president, the primary power to regulate foreign commerce and impose taxes. While some authority has been delegated to the executive, the court ruled that the Trump tariffs went too far. The justices rejected the broad use of national security and emergency powers as justification. Persistent trade deficits, they said, don't qualify as the extraordinary threat needed for emergency action. The ruling affirms that major economic decisions like tariffs require explicit congressional approval. The decision was about process and power, not the economic wisdom of tariffs. The issue now returns to Congress, which must decide whether to authorize new trade measures. The economic impact of the tariffs has always been hotly debated. Former President Trump warned that ending his tariffs would trigger a severe economic crisis, even comparing it to the Great Depression. He argued tariffs were vital for revenue and leverage, protecting American jobs and industries. Most economists and market analysts disagreed, calling the Depression warning misguided. They argued tariff revenue was a tiny fraction of federal spending, and that tariffs acted as a hidden tax, raising costs for businesses and consumers. Eliminating tariffs, they said, would stimulate the economy by lowering prices and boosting growth. Wall Street responded positively to the Supreme Court's decision, seeing it as a catalyst for investment and market stability. Investors had long viewed trade wars as a source of risk and uncertainty. The removal of tariffs is expected to unleash new growth and confidence. The debate reflects two philosophies: tariffs as protection versus open trade as prosperity. The Supreme Court's decision tips the scales toward open trade, at least for now. The economic consensus is that lower tariffs will benefit most Americans. The nation's trade policy is now set on a new course. The end of these tariffs will be felt in the wallets of everyday Americans. For years, consumers paid higher prices as companies passed on the cost of tariffs. With tariffs gone, prices for many imported goods are expected to fall, offering relief from the rising cost of living. Businesses that rely on imported materials will see lower production costs, making them more competitive and potentially creating jobs. However, domestic steel and aluminum industries may face renewed competition from cheaper imports, creating uncertainty for some workers. Farmers stand to benefit most, as foreign markets reopen and retaliatory tariffs are lifted. The agricultural sector, hit hard by the trade war, could see a major boost. The overall impact on jobs will be complex. Some may be at risk, but many sectors will benefit from lower costs and expanded markets. Economists believe the broader effect will be positive, spurring investment and growth. Export industries, from manufacturing to technology, will gain from reduced trade tensions. The transition may be challenging for some, but the consensus is that a low-tariff environment will strengthen the job market. The Supreme Court's decision promises a more dynamic economy for American families and businesses. The effects will ripple through every corner of the country. The Supreme Court's decision sent shockwaves around the world. America's major trading partners, including the EU, Canada, Mexico, and China, welcomed the ruling as a chance to de-escalate trade tensions. Allies signaled readiness to normalize trade and remove retaliatory tariffs, paving the way for smoother commerce. China saw the decision as a step toward restoring predictability in global trade, opening the door for new negotiations. International organizations like the World Trade Organization praised the ruling as a return to rules-based cooperation. The Trump administration's unilateral actions had challenged global norms. The court's decision signals a move back to dialogue. The world economy is deeply interconnected. Tariffs in one country ripple everywhere. The global response highlights a shared desire for stability and cooperation in trade. This ruling does more than eliminate tariffs, it redraws the lines of power in Washington. The Supreme Court clarified that Congress, not the President, sets trade policy. For decades, Congress delegated trade authority to the executive branch for efficiency. Now the court has set clear boundaries. No more massive unilateral tariffs without explicit congressional approval. Congress is back in the driver's seat, facing pressure to act on new trade legislation. Trade policy will now require debate, compromise, and transparency in the House and Senate. Lawmakers from different regions and industries will have a greater say. The ruling sets a precedent that will constrain future presidents, regardless of party. Any leader seeking to use tariffs must now work with Congress and build a legal case. This reassertion of congressional authority is a major check on executive power. The Supreme Court's decision sets the U.S. and the world on a new course. Dismantling the tariff structure signals a break from recent protectionism and a return to rules-based trade. The focus now shifts to Congress, which must define the future of American trade law. With midterm elections ahead, debates will intensify over how to protect U.S. interests and compete globally. For families, the ruling promises relief from higher prices. For workers and farmers, it opens new opportunities. The decision rebalances power in Washington, ensuring major economic choices involve elected representatives. It reinforces the principle that the U.S. is a nation of laws, not executive fiat. The end of the Trump-era tariffs marks a foundational shift in trade history. The world is watching as America redefines its economic role and the balance of power within its government. The implications will shape global trade and American politics for years to come.